Welcome to the Charlotte Chatter Podcast with Carrie Clift and Mitch Bennett. Now here are your hosts, Carrie and Mitch.
Here we are, the last couple days left in the month of May, and we're going to pump one out in the season 2, episode 16. And we have a monumental guest with us tonight, all the way from South Dakota, which they have the best. You guys, you have the best gal in the world running your state. I just have to say that. But Brent Thiel from Isabel, South Dakota, thank you for being on with us tonight. But yeah, I just have to go out there and say that. Go on a limb and say you got the best one in the whole country. So we're the governor to be. She should be president.
we a lot of people that call us or contact us from out of state echo your opinions of our governor.
Yeah, that is awesome. Well, good job on getting her elected. So, well, thank you for being on with us, Brent. And we got a whole bunch of fun stuff we're going to talk about here in a bit. But first off, we'll we're all in different regions right now. Of course, I'm in the PNW, right in the middle of the state of Washington, and then we got Brent in South Dakota. And Mitch, where are you at today? Are you in Hawaii, or are you back home?
I've never even been off the continent. So
really?
Not Hawaii, but Devin did tell me the other day that he's going to Ireland with the junior association. So that'll be pretty fun.
I've been there before. That is a lot of fun.
There's like a big youth conference that they're doing, and so the association's sending him and the vice president.
They need a chaperone.
I don't think it'd be a good idea to send you with them.
Well, no, both of us. Send both of us. What are you talking about? Yeah. That wasn't what I was entailing. Come on. We both. So my wife has 51 first cousins in Ireland. So her dad is first generation. So I have gone there.
Why you shouldn't go.
You imagine what kind of trouble could we get in Ireland?
Right.
The folks at the pubs really liked me. Trust me.
I'm sure.
We could stay with relatives. Now you got me all jacked up. I want in on this. So who do I got to talk to about being a chaperone? So who's in the lead of this thing?
I'm actually not sure. No, okay. I don't know.
I think a nice way of saying it is you don't have a chance.
Okay.
Yeah. That's why I was beating around the bush. I don't want to disappoint him.
They don't say no until they say no, right? So I was a John Deere salesman back in the day. You just keep going.
I know your type.
Yeah. So anyway, we're going to cover a little bit. Mitch, why don't you start out? What's been happening? I know you've been in a severe drought area here recently. So how are we looking?
Yeah. So Western Nebraska, which started off the year even worse than we were. I mean, they're going on their third year of drought. They actually had flooding the other day, which is about unheard of out there. I mean, they've been getting some 3-4 inch rains. I don't know what they're up to for totals, but there could be some places could be pushing 10+ inches of rain in May, which I don't think they get 10 inches a year around that McCook area. In some places they're about like what your climate is. And the worst thing is I think there's talks of shutting off the canal or limiting more water than they already limit it. And it's like, that's not good. Central part of the state got, they've been getting some rains. Not everywhere has been getting super blessed. I think they're still under, but they're creeping out on the drought monitor a little better. But our part of the state here, 15 miles from me, got an inch, which that would have been an inch in May. We normally get 10+ inches in May. But I think by my totals, I think I got 6,500s in May.
Oh,
and,
wow.
The news said it's the driest May since 1923. So
wow,
it's tough. But
that's 100 years. You realize that?
Yeah, we've got all kinds of chances of rain tonight. There's a 50% chance, but it just can't do it. Last night I went to bed and it was lightning off to the west, and I was like, I'm gonna sleep good. I'm just gonna hear that rain wake me up about 1 o'clock. Nah. I watched the radar this morning. It got to about 20 miles away and it just disappeared.
Wow.
I don't know. We'll get it. You just gotta stay positive and be prepared.
So if even if you got a lot of rain at this point, would it help? it matters? I mean, are you too far behind?
It'll help in some areas.
Mhm.
Like the alfalfa, I think, is going to be behind all year now. Our brome grass is about done. I mean, it's headed out and shrunk back really bad here this last week because we've been getting in the 90s here all of a sudden. But then like our warm season grasses, which we've got some meadows that we make, they could still be revived because they really didn't green up here till about 2 weeks ago. So
Yeah.
corn and beans, corn's feeling the stress. Mine looks really good where I live here. I don't know why, because it shouldn't. I mean, on
Yeah.
good years, it don't look this good. The beans are suffering. They're trying to poke through, and we've got about a 50% stand that's up, and they're just, you can't even see them from the road yet. But
Wow.
so if we got a little rain, it would sure help. But yeah, it would definitely. But I don't know. Like I said, we at least got chances in the forecast. So
yeah. How about you, Brent? What's South Dakota looking like this year?
You know, we're in a area that has a 12 to 15 inch annual rainfall, and we had a long, arduous winter, about bumping on 100 inches of snow.
Oh, wow.
And then kind of a blizzard in April. I'm in the northwest part of the state, and from us north, there's lots of death loss on the April calving thing, range calving. But in North Dakota. But since then, it's been pretty darn good. And about 2 weeks ago, we got from 1.5 inches to 4 inches of rain.
Oh,
so
wow.
Our grass is almost made, basically. It's just beautiful, and cattle are doing well. And just visiting with the commercial ranchers in our area, neighbors are branding and that sort of thing. Cows are in nice shape and coming back
Good.
after a long winter. So
good.
We're very fortunate. You mentioned the rain, and I was visiting with some feedlots today in western Kansas. They've been just droughts for 2 or 3 years.
Yep.
They've had ample rain, and actually, you probably saw the flooding in Hereford and the Panhandle of Texas. And you know, the market, the board boomed hard today up, and some of that is speculation on the death loss. Could be up to 30,000 head there in the Panhandle.
Wow.
Oh,
I saw
wow.
videos of that. That's insane.
Yeah, I didn't catch that, but
it wasn't good. So do you how many months do you have to feed out your cows in your neck of the woods?
You know, we're you can Google it, but we're on the Cheyenne and the Standing Rock Indian Reservation, and so it's kind of there's a reason no one lives here. It's kind of a harsh winter and it can be kind of a hot summer, but we can have the weather of North Dakota or eastern North Dakota and get like this last winter, but we can also have a more mild winter like Rapid City and that sort of thing. So you kind of have to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. But to answer your question, I've always left quite a bit of grass and just like to do that. So if we don't get too much snow, as an example, 2 years ago we grazed right into January.
Oh, good.
On graze, and then we don't, in the purebred operation, we don't feed any silage or anything to the cows. We'll cake them or after calving, or give them like a soy hull pellet, and then a nice grass hay or alfalfa mixed grass hay. And so I try to be, our sale's always the third Saturday in April, and now the Linscos have that, but I try to be done feeding cows by around sale time, and sometimes the 1st of April, and sometimes this year it was probably the 15th to the 20th.
Yeah.
But we have some areas where we have quite a bit of tame grass that we can start them on, and then we're move over to our warm season grasses.
Right. Well, very interesting differences. You know, we just started our alfalfa harvest in this area, first cutting alfalfa, and of course I'm blessed with a snowpack right above me in the Cascade Mountains, so water is
bountiful.
Yeah, it's usually not an issue. You know, I think maybe one time in the last 10 or 15 years we're rationed to maybe 70%, but we got I posted a picture on Facebook the other day just how our water system works here, and I mean, we do have pivots and stuff, but the corrugated ground that we have, we use gated pipe, and had a lot of people ask me, what is that? It's stuff that it's pretty prominent in this area. So, but just different watering system with irrigation. But, when we're only 7 to 8 inches of moisture here where I live, it's funny because, we'll get judged by Western Washington, which is, 25 to 30 inches in the Seattle area, which we're not that because we're east of the Cascades, but
Yep.
it's you get used to here and it's all dryland wheat. So, about 2 hours east of us. So quite a difference, but
Yeah.
it's fun talk about different areas. So, rolling ahead, Mitch, really good. Speaking of junior nationals, there's still some award sponsorships available.
I seen
okay.
a post the other day on Facebook that sounds like they probably have about any range of money you want to spend available for either class awards, or I think even like some of the photo contest and stuff like that. I don't know specifically which ones are still available, but if anybody's thinking about it, you'd be surprised. So I think pretty much anybody that donates to any of those specific awards gets listed in the programs usually, and
announced.
they usually have a board, and people actually notice it. So Brent,
is there
you've helped with junior nationals before there in South Dakota. You know how that goes. So
Yeah. Nancy and I helped host 3 of those, so that was
a
great experience.
Yep.
So is there a award sponsor for the golf tournament? Since we are the reigning golf tournament champions, or do we need to sponsor our own award?
I don't know,
but
we're probably kicked out for this.
But I did hear there's a bounty on your head, not mine, but yours. So
for what?
I don't know. For us winning the golf tournament, but I am so excited. Do you sign us up, or do we have to? Oh, we sign up there, don't we?
Yeah, I put it on my entries, but yeah, yeah, there could be a bounty going in as the underdogs, kind of wearing jean shorts,
we just snuck in there, didn't we? Who would ever thought of? Yeah, who would ever thought we would come out with a victory?
Well, we didn't have nothing to lose. Some other guys are way too serious.
They were stressed. We weren't even stressed at all.
We were like good old Brahmas. We had no stress gene at all.
Well, that's some fun stuff. So, with our special guest today, Brent, it is an honor for you to be on here with us. So, how about you give us a little background? How did you get started in this thing, and what gave you the Charolais blood? What gave you the cattle blood in you to get this thing rolling?
Oh, I really appreciate it. Both of you, very kind of you to invite me. But, yep, I was very fortunate, and my dad encouraged me to. Times were kind of tough in the 70s and 80s, and so he encouraged me to get an ag journalism degree along with physiology. And so consequently, when I got out of college at South Dakota State, I was very blessed to have some job opportunities, and one of them was with the Charolais Association. And at that time, the headquarters was in Houston, and so I got the opportunity to fly down there and interview, and did not take the job right away. I wanted it very badly, but I would have had to live in Texas at that time, and my family, etc., were up here. So after some negotiating, I ended up going to work for the association in the spring of 1981, and lived at Sturgis, South Dakota, and had the opportunity to travel the western half of the United States, everything west of the Mississippi, and western Canada, and they were kind enough to send me to China and a few other places. So it was a great experience for a young single guy.
Yeah.
And so I worked as a fieldman, and then not too long after that, they had a shakeup at the association, and the fellow that was my boss through the rest of those years was Joe Garrett, and he came in and over a period of about 6 months, he either fired or forced out all of the employees except myself and three other people. And so there was quite a change there. And he also, it was quite a arduous event, but he convinced the board and the membership to sell that. They owned almost a square block of downtown Houston and had just a small office building there. The oil business was booming right then. And so the association sold that land to Shell Oil and took the money and put most of it in investments, which the association to this day still lives off a good bit of those investments. Then he also got some low interest and some encouragement from Platte County up by the airport there in Kansas City, and they built the building there. And so for a long time, the headquarters was Kansas City. But one of the best things to come to me from the Charlet experience is my wife Nancy went to the University of Missouri and started there. She's a few years younger than I am, and she was the editor and the communications director. So
Wow.
we met
wow.
and kind of where that all got started. But
So you were South Dakota State, and what is their mascot? What were you guys?
the Jackrabbits, the Jacks.
Yeah. That's what. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you're University of, where'd your wife go? University of Missouri.
Yep.
Yep.
That's the Tigers.
Tigers. A jackrabbit met a tiger, or a tiger met a jackrabbit. Huh?
Yeah.
This is how that goes, right?
Yeah.
Jack.
There's probably
Jack
a song
Tiger.
somewhere.
There is. Yeah. Well, that is awesome. So, a little history there. You were in Sturgis. So, did you ever do the bike rally in Sturgis?
I always tried to be gone when the rally.
Really? I don't know. Did you see what was it yesterday, day before? There was two of the bike clubs got into a little brawl and they started beating on each other, and a couple of them ended up dead from a couple of groups. So, okay, guess it was good that it wasn't during the Sturgis rally, but
they take it serious. Yep.
Yeah.
You mentioned the opportunities I was given, and Arnold Wink was the national president at about that time in 1981, as I recall, and very influential, not only in the breed but also the great mentor for me, and I have the utmost respect for him and Carol and their families, of course, and all they've done.
Yes.
But no, it was great. I was blessed. My boss, Joe Garrett, was also a pilot and an ex-Army person, and so he loved to fly, and he had a Cessna 172. So in the summer, he would leave Kansas City, pick me up in Sturgis or Rapid City, and we would fly to the West Coast, out to San Francisco or Calgary, or one time at Rigby, Idaho, and Texas, and lots of different flying, always in the summer, always at least one mountain range or two, and always a little turbulence. But,
Right.
But he was the boss, so when he said go, we went.
We went.
Yeah, great experiences, and the person that hired me, the first executive there that I dealt with, was Don Nelson. Dr. Nelson was just a really nice man and had gone to Cal Poly, and then was the executive there for just a brief period of time in Houston. And so there were a few changes, but then a lot of great experiences, and got to take in. I remember the first junior national that I went to, as I recall, was in Brookings, South Dakota, and I suppose he was 14 or 15. But the young guy that showed the champion there was just one of his first junior nationals was Troy Thomas.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah, lots of names. The great thing about the Charlet breed is if you look at those junior nationals even today, a lot of those parents, grandparents, or relatives were part of the junior thing. And one of the best examples is on the other mic there with Mitch. Yep. And so I can remember as a fieldman going to his grandpa's place always during the Nebraska State Fair in Lincoln. And a lot of Mitch's uncles and aunts were about my age, so we just kind of hit it off.
Yeah.
And I loved going up there for a lunch with his grandma because he had a big, long bench, and there were pews, basically, or a bench along the table. And I don't know I think there was 11 kids in Mitch's dad's family.
Yep, there was a bunch.
Yep, and they're kind of a passionate Czechoslovakian family. I can remember sitting there, and I thought, well, I better just listen because somebody better, because the rest of them are all talking.
They do have the gift. Yes.
Yeah, they were always very kind to me, and a lot of good things came out of there.
Yeah, that pew is still sits in the kitchen. Unfortunately, my grandma just passed away here in March, but lots and lots and lots of memories there. So yeah, that kitchen probably hasn't changed much. Maybe new flooring, I think, is the only thing I've ever seen done to that. And that was only because I think it was about wore through.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
That was awesome. I mean, you got to see a lot of country and got to meet a lot of people during that time with the association. It sounds like going to China and everything. So, you've told some stories. What with some of the places you went overseas, what was the most take
Yeah.
back that you got?
Well, I was in over my head, you might say, but my boss sent me to China trade deal, and there I was, 23, 4 years old, whatever, and I had the opportunity to meet with the Minister of Agriculture,
No.
and the one thing I remember is, oral hygiene wasn't a big thing in that population at that time, and they eat a cabbage, kind of like a kimchi. They have another name for it, but so you had to kind of brace yourself when you talk to some of those politicians.
Yeah.
But it was a wonderful experience. They assigned me some students from the university, typically grad students, and that spoke English as translators, and they were just wonderful. And a lot of them were similar age to me, so there was a bonding there and a chance, and we got to travel some and see, and I remember the only one of the first times I ever had a gun pulled on me was in China, and
Oh, geez.
yeah, we were at the hotel and we went down. Luckily, a French diplomat had kind of taken me in, and you gave your name. Their destination to. There was always at least one person at the hotel that spoke English, and they'd say you want to go such, and they would write it in Chinese and Mandarin, and then you'd give it to the cab driver, and from there on you're just on your own. And so he pulled into an embassy, and we could tell it was the wrong one, but it was an Eastern Bloc Soviet country, and so they didn't take too kindly to us. Dropped their guns down on. He finally squealed the tires, and we got out of there.
Oh, wow.
We ended up at the U.S. Embassy where we were supposed to be, but yeah, those were great experiences. And
wow.
And I was fortunate enough. There were a lot of Charlet sales in Canada at that time that advertised in the Charlet Journal, and so I got 10 sales up at Edmonton and down Red Deer and over in Saskatchewan and just to Manitoba and just a lot of wonderful experiences and wonderful people. And we had some, one of the biggest female sales I ever remember was the Gardner Charlet dispersal at Richland. Yep, and there were over 4,000 females.
Wow. Wow.
Crazy.
That was quite an event. And, there was Murphy's, one of the big ones. They would have been on the West Coast in California. And I can't remember the exact number, but that would have been one of the, kind of premier sales of that time.
Wow.
And I got in on just a few. They were kind of at the end of the full French era. And a few of them around Dallas and that sort of thing. And
yep.
I'll never forget, I was on a bus at the airport in Dallas with George Morse. And you can Google him, but George was a premier auctioneer at the time, sold a lot of the real elite full French sales and Hereford sales and that sort of thing. And he told me that, I don't know, that'd be early 80s. He said, in the height of the French days, if we didn't gross $1 million, we didn't really figure we had a sale,
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there were, Nelson Bunker Hunt and Bing Crosby and all before my time, but there were some real players in there, that were very active and very bullish. And Robert Jernigan and his wife Modena were kind of the premier sale managers at that time. French sales and so yeah, there's been a lot of good things and I always enjoyed as a fieldman. I was just very blessed to get to know a lot of those families, like and that, but also take in a lot of those state summer shows, the Minnesota summer show, the Nebraska junior show, and the South Dakota and the Texas, of course, was a big deal even then. But just a lot of family deals, a lot of picnics, and getting thrown in a few swimming pools and lots of different.
Yeah, we had water balloons flying around last junior nationals in Nebraska. I think my wife had something to do with that, and I was like, I was caught in the shrapnel. Yeah, that is good. So all this experience that you had with the association led right into what you did in your next chapter, which was mine bred some of the top genetics in the whole country. So how did that all come about when you become a part of the Linkskov family? So,
Well, I was just very fortunate. I met Les Linskov in the 80s there, and Les bought his first Charolais cattle in 1979, 1980. And he's an overachiever, a go-getter, and we uh, we just kind of were friends or acquaintances. I bought a few cattle for him, and in the spring of 1987, I came up to see Les as a fieldman, and I was getting married in July to Nancy, and we were driving by on the way to look at some cows, and he said, "Well, what are you going to do when you get married?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know." And I loved my job, and I couldn't envision doing anything different. But he said, "Well, this place," and he pointed right to where I'm sitting. He said, "This place is coming up for sale. You ought to buy that, and we'll partner up." And I didn't give it a second thought. I wasn't really interested. But over time, we got married in July, and we moved here in December of that
oh
year.
wow,
Yeah, it's been a great run. And Les and his wife Marcia, you couldn't ask for better partners or better people. And I was always kind of a stick in the mud, but Les was a go-getter, and we kind of melded together over the years. And one of the more interesting things stems back to Mitch's family as well. And I had been up there at their farm at Erman Benish's during the Nebraska State Fair, and I saw this young bull, and I really liked him. And he was an 828 son, and just a nice bull. And Mitch's uncle Mike, I think, actually owned him. But anyway, we went up and looked at his mother, and that was kind of that. But then over the next couple of years, followed him a little bit, and Mitch's grandpa Erman would sell bulls to a guy up at V-Tail at Martin, South Dakota, and then they would buy this gentleman's name was Butch Fanning, and they would buy Butch's feeder calves and feed them there at Valparaiso. Well, anyway, it turns out the boys got to squabbling a little, and Mike sold that bull to Butch Fanning. Well, Butch and Les Linskov, my partner, rodeoed together in college, and they were old rodeo hands. And anyway, I told Les one day, I said, "There's a pretty darn good bull up there at V-Tail." And so we ended up looking at him and bought him, and that was old BCR Polden Unlimited. And
oh wow,
yeah. So if you look at nearly every cow for multiple generations stems back to Polden Unlimited. I tried not to ever do a high line breeding coefficient, but I did try to line breed, trying to keep a consistent product for our commercial ranches. And so at one time we had about 200 daughters and granddaughters of Polden Unlimited.
Wow.
And he was a breed changer. Not everyone liked him, by the way, and he was kind of a Cavagese bull. He was a high marbling bull, and he was a very good footed udder kind of bull. But a lot of times at that time, that wasn't always what was real popular, you might say. But we hung in there with him, and I have to tell one more little story. Butch passed away this last year, but he was a character, to say the least.
Oh, yeah.
So Les bought half a Polden Unlimited from Butch for $2,500.
Oh wow.
And, then when I came along, we decided, so we gave Butch $25,000 for the other half, and that was quite a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
Butch built a barn there on his ranch, and he called it the Polden Unlimited barn.
I know which one you're talking about. Yep, just west of the house.
Yeah, but Polden Unlimited, and then we sold part of him a little later to Willard Walker, and then he kind of took off, you might say. But anyway, he certainly had his shortcomings, but he was a bull that helped us establish a breeding program, and he was quite a traveler. I know I'm getting a little long-winded, but
no, you're good.
We were kind of fairly big country here, and when he got done breeding his cows, he would just take off.
Yeah.
At that time, we didn't have four-wheelers or anything, so I'd head out with a horse and try to find him. And usually the wind, you could figure out what direction he went, but he might be, honestly, 2-3 miles from his cows.
Oh, wow.
Yep, and he sometimes would go through one herd of cows and go to another herd.
Oh, wow.
Yep, but every time he saw you, he'd come riding over the hill, and he would head back. He never fought you. But I spent a good summer or two just chasing Polden Unlimited.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Athletic.
Yep. Oh, that's great. So, with all the years of obviously Pulled and Limited was inspirational. Is there some other bulls that through the years that in the Charolais world that really have you felt were game changers in the last 20 years?
Yeah, I'll say that we tried line breeding with Pulled and Limited, obviously, and so we had would be a great grandson, and his name was LT Wyoming Wind.
Mm-hmm.
So he came along. He was born in '94, and two gentlemen from Wyoming bought him. That's how he got his name, Wyoming Wind. And anyway, that bull, you could probably pull it up. It would still be among the most registrations, and especially worldwide if you included Canada and other countries. But he had his shortcomings as well. But we sold sons out of him for nearly a decade, just because commercial ranchers really trusted the vigor at birth, calving ease,
Mm-hmm.
and the phenotype and that. And he also had a fair play in the purebred sector as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Quite a few people were influential, and influenced by his breeding. And then if you follow the line a couple more generations down, comes to a bull LT Ledger that we raised, and he may be bumping or surpassing Wyoming Wind now in total registration. And so those bulls, they were all homozygous polled and all kind of fit into what we thought was an ideal commercial setting at the time, anyway.
Right.
And so those bulls all came along, and I was very blessed, with my partnership with Les and Nancy and Marcia and that sort of thing, but also just a lot of commercial ranchers. The Linscos hosted the sale this year at our place, but over those 40 some years, it's just you can't put a description to seeing the second and third generation of ranch families sitting in there buying bulls,
right,
and so that's to me that's the highlight of it right there. And
yeah,
some of those ranches have bought in all 40 some sales, and some only 20 years or 10, but 30. But it's kind of neat, and so those people relationships, and then getting a chance to follow those cattle through, sold at auction.
Yeah. So you've seen these these trends, I guess. You'd see, in the show cattle world, or maybe even what the needs of a commercial cattleman has. What have you seen in the last 10 years, and what do you see coming moving forward on the trend for Charolais cattle?
I think one of the things that I could say more than over 10 years, but over the last 30 years, um, the ranchers selling Charolais bulls have done an excellent job, and I took a lot of interest and in the end pride. But I tried to go visit my competition, and there's a lot of good breeders in North, South Dakota, Nebraska, and other areas as well. But I tried to go see what people were raising and selling, and I can honestly tell you, from the time I started as a fieldman in 80, 81 till now, the quality of bulls sold in the Charolais business is tremendous.
Right.
And it's, necessity breeds results, but we have to provide very good cattle, and cattle that perform and calve and have vigor at birth and hit all the marks, or we're not going to be in business. And our customers demand it, and so do these other breeders. And so, competition is good, and we need to always see that as a positive. And we want to put the best product out there we can. But when I go around to names you would know in the Dakotas and Nebraska and et cetera, I just see excellent Charolais bulls that are going to calve and hold up, cover some country. And to me, that's as good advertising as you can get, is putting those good kind of middle-year-old bulls out there. And other breeders obviously have particular interests in size or type or something they're pursuing. But in this country, the primary thing is calving ease, vigor at birth, and then they want a lot of weaning weight and a lot of pounds when the time comes down the road. But because our weather is so unpredictable and usually unpleasant in the spring, those really basic traits become really evident.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you think of, talking Cavanese? So, we've talked about this on prior episodes in, different areas. I think Mitch was it up in Minnesota or something, you can add maybe just because of the weather. You talked about
Yep.
weather and
Yep.
maybe a bull that weighed 90 in your neck of the woods would produce calves in 80 in my neck of the woods or something.
Oh, exactly. Yep.
Yep.
Environment is huge, and you can overdo calving, and there needs to be performance, and there needs to be some outcome to those cattle, but vigor at birth and ability to get up and go will surpass that every time.
Right.
And you know uh, and I'm sure that you could poll the ranchers in these 3 or 4 states or 10 states, and they'd give you the same answer. So, but you just don't hear about Cavanese issues with Charolais cattle, and we have actually customers now that breed their virgin heifer Charolais, Angus or Red Angus, because they just get so much more outcome in weaning. Then they go back in and breed some mature cows, Angus, to raise their replacements. And so to me, that's a feather in the Charolais breed's cap. You just can't.
All right.
That tells you something right there.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we get these calves on the ground, we get them growing, and our next step is to market these things. And from the commercial cattleman standpoint, not so much on the purebred side, but what are the things that we can be doing, even us as breeders, to help market our cattle, market the Charolais cross calves to, there's parts of the U.S. that don't see that value where some parts do. So what can we do as a whole throughout the whole regions to get that story across to feedlot guys, to packers, on the value of Charolais beef? Because they've seen it on the Angus side and the marketing that has gone into that. But what can we do as breeders that up the ante here and make it better for everybody across the whole region?
Yep. There's an old saying that all politics is local, and to some degree, marketing is too. And now with the internet and technology, females and elite cattle and that can be marketed anywhere. But to get back to your question, as a breeder, we bear the responsibility of our commercial customers' success, and consequently, I'm going to give you an example, and not meant to be self-serving, but in the early 90s, we took some pens of bulls to Denver and had a great run there. It was a great experience, but we decided to leave that in the mid 90s after 4 or 5 years and focus on marketing our customers' commercial cattle. And that's not for everyone, by the way. It's a very time consuming, and it's a big project, but the effect of that can be seen. And so my point being is, it doesn't matter if you're selling 10 bulls or 100. Getting to know your customers' cattle and finding out where they're going or where the potential for them to go is. Maybe there's a connection for you with Simplot or Agri Beef, for example, out on the West Coast, but it doesn't have to always be the big fish. And we actually targeted the small fish because a lot of times that small farmer feeder, for example, he's got them right in his yard, him and his wife or his hired man are feeding him. He's willing to give a little more for those feeder cattle because he's actually feeding them and seeing them as compared to a corporate lot.
Right.
But all that being said, it doesn't matter, where Mitch is at there in eastern Nebraska's prime feeding country, and some of the best Charcross cattle in the world are fed right there within 100 miles of his house. But all that being said, somebody's got to break the ground if it's a new outlet, or keep those old feed yards on the hook. And on the positive side, I believe in the March meetings, the board at the AICA voted to hire a full-time marketing or liaison person to deal with the packers and the feedlot. I think that's going to be huge. And I think, a group of breeders and industry people met with the packers multiple times this last year. The fruits of that are probably still being hopefully developed. But anyway, the association, needs to be at the forefront of that. And in doing that, they need to direct us as breeders in how to do it. But in the meantime, each of us has that responsibility in my opinion. And it starts in the local setting, whether it's the livestock market right up the road at Bassett or Burwell from Mitch, or as you go out west in your country, a lot of those cattle trade hands private treaty and those kinds of
Yes.
things. But getting one order buyer on your side can have a huge impact, and just that positive tone, that connection, you just don't realize the impact that can have on placing some of those calves privately. And those are all things that aren't easy and aren't necessarily always fun, but they are what we have to do. We have to, the cattle will hold up, the cattle will do it. One of the biggest challenges with the certified Angus beef is they have to have a black hide. And if we can overcome that, the sky's the limit. But in the interim, the old sterling silver program with Cargill and those kinds of things still allow the opportunity. And the second thing is, and I'm not as sharp at it as I should be, but the program with brazen beef and that sort of thing, and particularly if we could expand the all natural side of it, and don't, in my opinion, don't have to be that, but the identification. This animal was raised on Mitch's farm, and here's a picture of his kids feeding them, and those kinds of things. There's a big market window there, especially for a breed like us that fits those programs pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's really well said. That's, so are you seeing an increase in heifer retention or herd build back since the drought in your area? Or are you seeing more people
this year? To be honest, from us west last year was so dry, and west of on through southwest Nebraska, and not so much in Wyoming. But there's going to be more heifer retention this next year. But I was just visiting with a well-known breeder of another breed in Missouri, and he pointed to 3 different commercial cattlemen in his area that just aren't going to do it. They're going to, they've cut back. They're going to run about X number of cows and farm a little more ground. Now, that's not universal or anything, but the rebuild may take a little longer than people anticipate.
Right.
Yeah, and it's an exciting time to be in the commercial cattle business, and you can feel it, even though they don't. In this country, they sell their calves October through November, and then a few retained calves in January and February. But anyway, they don't have the checks yet, but you can just feel it in their personality. Their outlook is so much better than it's been for several years.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's like the cattle prices right now are great, and hopefully that it looks like we're going to have a strong fall. So hopefully that'll turn into a strong bull sale season next February, March. So
by coincidence, I was visiting with a Charolais breeder today from eastern South Dakota, and he just shared this with me. He sold a group of weigh-up cows and cull old bulls, big bulls, 2,500 to 3,000 pound bulls, and he a month ago he kind of figured out in his budget about what they'd bring, and they actually grossed twice what he was expecting.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
wow.
So those kinds of things that makes a difference.
So right now I've been going on watching Cattle USA and just watching sales throughout the whole U.S. and especially on Wednesdays you can get a pretty good snapshot of what's going on through the U.S. and prices, and it's been fun. I think we took a picture of what one group of heifers, Mitch, what they bring, $1,750 I think it was per head, and some steers around $1,700 in Kansas, South Dakota, and so it's Charolais cross cattle. But it's been fun to see what the value and it is, and it's growers aren't getting rich. I mean, this is going back into fertilizer and a lot of costs that are being incurred. Feed
the last 5 years.
Yeah, and so it isn't like we're just cutting a fat hog, people, but it's our time to shine, and because the expenses of interest on money and in our area the water's more expensive, insurance, everything's gone up, fuel obviously, so this is hopefully offset some of those rising costs that we've incurred the last 2 years especially. So
And I hope people are diligent when they're keeping their bulls, because it seems to me that some of these guys expanded a little quick, and they're like, oh, I got more customers, I need more bulls. Well, these big weigh up prices for the bulls, and I'm not saying anybody in particular, but these big weigh up prices for the bulls are going to create even more of a need for more bulls. But I feel like instead of expanding, if you just keep your quality plane rising,
Yep.
and I've watched a few sales, and I'm like, don't sell that bull.
yeah,
Who's it? Who are you trying to lose your customer?
Yeah.
You got to stay. And part of that goes back to me. People are, the DPDs and all the genomic testing is great, but I've said on a few other podcasts, my grandpa Erman could look at a feedlot steer and know what it needs. He didn't sample the feed. He just knew that hay wasn't that good, or the corn wasn't that good, or, they needed more corn. I need to up the ration, They didn't have no darn scales. He just fed it, we kind of need to do that a little better, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Go
Sharpen
back
a
to
knife.
Yeah.
You mentioned the sales and that sort of thing. This Friday coming up here this week, Fort Pierre has their annual auctioneer sale, and there'll be 11,000 cattle, and they'll be fancy. But there'll be a set of Charolais on there that'll, if they don't top the market, they'll be right at the very peak of it. And got fall calves, so that'll be kind of fun. And
I'll have to watch that one.
I was going to say, put that on your list, Kerry.
Yeah. Which one is that? Thursday? Is that what you sent?
No,
Friday.
Friday.
Yep.
I'm sorry.
In
Okay,
Fort
cool.
Pierre, write it down.
Yep. Got it.
They sell the fall calves first, so it's
Okay.
an early deal. But anyway, it'll be fun to see how they shake out, and the cattle do well, and reputation offerings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's I think we have some exciting times. I got a couple of fun questions to ask you. Being you're a South Dakotian, right?
Oh boy.
So is it a law that every kid from South Dakota is a saddle bronc rider? I mean, there sure is a lot that come from that neck of the woods.
Yeah, we're so fortunate because a lot of them come right in our neighborhood. So, there are many a world champion that's come within 30, 50 miles right here on the Cheyenne Reservation. But yeah, not everybody's a saddle bronc rider. But we mentioned Butch Fanning that had Pulled Unlimited. He was a good bronc rider, and my partner Les Linsko was a South Dakota Rodeo Association bull rider of the year.
Oh wow.
Yeah, yeah. So there were some tough cats.
Well, on the side note, and people do know this, I'm on the Ellensburg Rodeo Board for the last 12 years, and this year we're celebrating our 100th anniversary of the Ellensburg Rodeo, which we are a top 10 rodeo. So we see all those guys come traveling through Ellensburg every Labor Day weekend. So kind of fun.
Maybe Butch's grandson he's been hitting it pretty good, I think, here. I think he does saddle bronc. Yeah. he looks tougher than nails.
Oh yeah.
But am I thinking of someone else, or did you used to ride a bull?
No, the only time I rode a bull was in the Isabel Parade.
That's what I was getting at.
I will share with you, that was quite an experience. His name was HTA Tundra. I bought him from Harry and Joan Airy in Manitoba, and he was a pet. And he was about 3 or 4 years old, and he weighed about 2,500, and maybe a little more than that. And I could ride him anywhere. Steering him was another factor. And so I had a young man working for me, and he kind of rode along as an outrider. And so the parade started, and we have a beautiful parade in Isabel and a barbecue and everything before the rodeo. Well, anyway, they had the flags, the saddle horses with flags first, and then me with the bull, and then the grand marshal, etc., the rest of the parade. Well, the old bull was lumbering down Main Street, and he wouldn't keep up.
Oh.
And there was about a block gap between me and the horses.
Oh, funny.
But the neighbor's dog came up out of the ditch, and pretty quick we blew by the horses, and we were headed south out of town. We were a block ahead of the horses by the time we got done. I couldn't stop them. So
oh wow.
So how many times did you ride him to the parade? Just once?
Just once, yeah.
Did anybody get that on video? Is there any video footage of that?
I don't think so, but that was a pretty good day in the neighborhood, you might say.
I knew you'd rode a Charolais bull somewhere. That's why I was asking.
That is awesome.
Oh.
Yeah, I've tried a couple since then. I tried old Rio Bravo and I tried Ledger, but I could never steer them at all. I could get on, I couldn't. And then Nancy didn't. She got to thinking maybe that wasn't such a good idea anymore.
So you brought up a bull that, and I've said in some of our prior episodes, Mitch can attest to this, that I think Rio Bravo was in.
He has
my
a
mind,
man crush on him.
Yeah, he does. He does.
Yeah.
I like that bull. And if there's an unsung hero out there, to me, if you look at some genetics now, there's Rio Bravo popping up. And
yeah, we have in the if you look at that pedigree, it goes back to a cow Les had way back. But anyway, there were 4 daughters out of that cow, 7N, and then consequently, one of those had a daughter that ended up being Rio Bravo's mother. But Rio Bravo's sister was what we called the Brenda cow that produced 6120 that produced Ledger, and then Rushmore, full brother to Rushmore.
See, Mitch, I told you there's something to that pedigree line.
Yeah, yeah, and the old Brenda cow family, pretty predictable. There was a Diamond Dam back in there, 7109, that wasn't the first Brenda, but they kind of accelerated that, and nearly perfect udder score. And so we kept propagating that, and it carried on through several of those cows. But I'm just tickled you'd even remember old Rio Bravo. But
he ain't that old.
No.
You're gonna date us all if you keep talking that way.
Well, just to show you, I mean, I bought a bull at Wright's a couple months ago, and it's out of a 6120 daughter. So that's how much faith I have in that Rio Bravo sign or that genetic line. And and I've said this before in a prior episode. I just think he's a bull. So he was short lived, right? I mean, how many years did he live?
He was only 3 or 4. ABS bought him,
and
that was all good. And he was a big semen producer, but I made a mistake and sent him down to Georgia to a gentleman on a partnership thing. And I think he was only about 4 or 5 and he died down there. Yeah. So he was not long for this earth, but as you mentioned, Kerry, very graciously, genetically, he carried on for quite a few generations.
Oh yeah. I have my best, in my opinion, my best March bull calf goes back to would be 3 or 4 generations, 30 generations to Rio Bravo on the dam side right now. And they've got that extra rib and they got an awesome hip, and the neck set is just perfect, right up in those shoulders, and I just got a bunch of neat features to him. And I think if he would have lived longer, I think we would have seen a lot more things that he could have done. But I mean, obviously, through sons and grandsons, it's been remarkable what he's even today you're seeing it pop up. So
well, I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, but there's a lot of one of the things I didn't mention, but over the years we've been blessed with people from Australia to South America to Canada to all over, and in 1995 we hosted the World Charolais Tour here. And that was quite an experience. And that they had primarily been to, for example, Yellowstone and Mount Rushmore and that sort of thing. And got here, they were pretty eager to see cattle. And we had some neighbors and guys, outriders on horses, and we had 3 bulls. Tundra was one of them, for example, with cows, and they got off the buses, and we had pitched a tent and had some music and different things, live music. And anyway, they literally just ran off the buses and got on these wagons. We had wagons with teams, and we got so many on there, we had to get some off just to take off. So the first team took off, and our neighbor was driving it, and they got up to the first gate. And when they went off to get the gate, well, I hear there was a rattlesnake under the wagon.
Oh,
yeah, it got a little western there for a little bit. So we've been blessed with a lot of wonderful people have been out here to nowhere.
You need to sit down with Taylor Sheridan, who writes the Yellowstone script, and just give him a little bit of pointers on that stuff that he can add into some of his episodes. I think you could be a co-writer with Taylor Sheridan there. So with those storylines, that's awesome. You just can't make that up. So
Yeah, Kerry, I think what you're really saying is don't quit your day job.
no. So I do have to say, because you mentioned something. Are you on the Cheyenne Reservation, or are you
Yep.
next to it?
Yep, no, we're on the Cheyenne, and Les and I and our families run on the Cheyenne and the Standing Rock.
So this is, see, I knew I liked you. I grew up on the Yakima Indian Reservation for my first 20 years of my life. And my dad was a logger, farmer, rancher, cattleman down there, but which is just south of me.
Yes.
About an hour. But so grew up on the res and then moved off and didn't go back, I guess. But yeah, see, some of the few to proud, Mitch. I knew we had some in common.
They won't let us on the reservation.
Yeah.
No Czechoslovakians.
Yeah.
That'd stir way too much up.
Not the Magic Cross.
No, it's not. It's not.
We've calmed down a bit through the years. So, so I got one more fun question before we close out today's episode. But this actually comes from a fan that listens to the Charlotte Chatter. And I told him that I was interviewing you, and he's all excited. So he's a commercial cattleman here in Ellensburg, Washington. Runs about 500, 600 head of cows. And he had several questions, which I've kind of asked through the evening. But one of them was, he wanted to know, is pheasant hunting a large draw for tourists in South Dakota? Or is it just, he reads about it, but is that a true story?
That's very true. And particularly in the eastern half of the state. But it's changing some, and in no small part due to my partner, Les Linsko. About 20 years ago, he had this vision, and I'll get to the end of the question. But anyway, he has a beautiful guest lodge and does an excellent job, and kind of a white tablecloth, high-end pheasant hunting, and they really take care of them and guide them and just make it a great experience. And so consequently, that's one example of just a lot of really nice pheasant and grouse hunting in South Dakota, and it's still an area where, unfortunately and fortunately, it's not very populated. So you can kind of come out here for 3 days or a week or however you like it, and step back in time a little bit, you might say.
Oh wow!
And so people come here, and the camaraderie and the fellowship, and then the nature, and it can be all the way from 70 and sunny to 26 and a snowy wind, but people love it, and there's just a bonding that happens hunting pheasants, and so people, they've even got a heated, air conditioned house for the dogs, and they've got
wow.
It's so anyway, to answer your question, through central South Dakota, and there's just a lot of ranches that have developed all the way from a full service like the Linskos have, to just providing lodging or just providing an area for people to hunt.
Wow.
And there's still a lot of public hunting in western South Dakota. There's a lot of public lands that are all walk-in, and you can walk in anywhere you choose.
Mitch, we need to go do that. Do you think we could pack a gun next to each other and still come out alive?
I don't know about that.
Find out how good your friendship really is.
Yeah, I seen you play golf. I can't imagine you with the shotgun.
Or I guess you can't holler for when you shoot somebody. That doesn't do any good, right?
Yeah.
Well, Brent, thank you for being on with us. It's been a pleasure. That's a huge amount of history of the Charlie breed and what you've done for us. We ought to do this again sometime.
Yeah, I was gonna say we could go 3 more hours. I think
we could. And maybe we'll touch on some genetics maybe this fall on some female sales. That'd be kind of fun. But
I can't thank you enough, and really, I'm the lucky one. The Charlie breeders and the commercial cattlemen have treated me so well, and Nancy and I, and I just can't thank everyone enough for being so gracious and so kind to us over the years. So thank you very much.
Well, we appreciate what you've done for our breed. So we're going to keep it rolling. We're going to keep this thing, the promotion and visiting with people and being nice to one another and keep this Charlotte thing rolling, huh, Mitch? So that's our job. We're sticking to it.
Man. Outstanding.
Well, for all you out there, we'll see you on the next trip, and have a good one. Good night. Sometimes good boys act like bad boys. Don't take offense, deep down we're all little boys.
It's just part of our DNA. A 7-day road trip, hanging out with friends, nothing but fun, adventures, and drinking. Come on, y'all, and little boys. The boys will be boys.